Hello, my name is Tony. Director John Frankensteiner boasted some classic movies enshrined in his portfolio of achievement. He had a singular talent for applying a vice-like, galvanized documentary style to the screen fiction that gave his work a thrilling edge over many of his contemporaries. The films he made were not always financially successful or blessed with mass popularity, but predominantly his capacity for invention and stylistic innovation are defining qualities in nearly all of his work. I hadn't thought much about Prophecy for a good many decades, saw it only once on the big screen, can't say it rocked my world or left me particularly inspired, but then Streed of Abracious Productions put it back on my radar recently and I thought I'd give it another look. So there it is, and here we go. The success of Jaws kicked off an obsession with creature features, with studios chasing after the replication of that success and mostly failing to achieve it. I'm not sure what drew Frankenheimer to this project, but the director himself cites problems with alcohol affecting his judgment at the time. I can understand that when you're pissed out of your box, it's surprising what seems like a good idea in such circumstances. Like you may have seen some of the stuff I've done on this channel. Well, I think it's a valid explanation anyway, but then I would say that. The original screenplay for Prophecy was by David Seltzer, the man who gave us The Omen, and he was also responsible for the novelization. Or maybe it was a novel first, I'm not sure. Anyway, he wrote it and applied the same painstakingly accurate research processes to science and nature he applied to the Bible and history in The Omen, which is to say, the basis is janky and cranky as fuck. A case of what you don't know, you guess at or make up. Well, suppose it is fiction, yeah? Prophecy is an eco-horror creature feature fiasco with a message. The message being, don't fuck with Mother Nature or she'll kick your motherfucking ass. The premise sees inner city doctor Robert Foxworth offered a job by a contact in the Environmental Protection Agency. His mission is to write a report about the environmental impact of a logging operation in Maine. There is conflict between the indigenous Native American tribe and the logging company, and the report is to settle the issue one way or the other. Vern's wife, Maggie, Talia Shire, is a cellist with a symphony orchestra and pregnant. She hasn't told him because he doesn't want kids. My guess is, being a doctor and all, he'll notice soon enough, unless he's particularly unobservant. Reminds me of a time when, before the birth of our first child, I went shopping for a pram. In the shop, I got chatting to a woman also looking for a pram. Noting her figure, when's your child due, I asked. I had him 2 months ago, she tersely replied. Oops. Well, how the fuck was I to know she was just clinically obese? I'm not a doctor. Anyway, Vern and Maggie pack up and head out to rough it in the wilds in a cabin beside a lake. Weird shit is going down though. Some lumberjacks have gone missing and the search and rescue team sent to find them has also gone missing, apart from one lone bloodhound which has returned to base. Director of the mill, Isley, Richard A. Dysart, blames the local Native Americans, or Opis, who were led by Hawks Armand Asante and Ramona Victoria Racimo. Opis stands for Original People, Not Other Problems, which they certainly have enough of. Tribe members are losing physical coordination, children are born deformed and dead, and the general mortality rate is on the rise. Vern witnesses strange phenomena, like a salmon big enough to swallow a duck, a tadpole the size of a bullfrog, plant roots growing on the surface of the ground. Ramona's grandfather, tribal leader Hector George Clutesi, who burns his fingers accidentally with cigarettes yet fails to feel or notice it, believes the missing persons are the prey of Catardin, a vengeful spirit of the forest made flesh, to defend the sacred land against interlopers. This is utter bullcrap. Catardin is actually a giant mutated bear that walks upright. In fact, it looks to be half bear and half fused together lumps of chewed bloody gristle. A gristly bear. Vern discovers mercury is being used by the paper mill as a fungicide and pumped out into the river. It is the mutagen responsible for causing the giantism in the wildlife and the birth defects. Vern grimly advises that mercury is the only substance across the placental barrier, which isn't true. For example, alcohol can do the same thing and results in kids being born with fetal alcohol syndrome, but I'll let it go for now. This is especially worrying for the pregnant Maggie, who has just eaten what was probably contaminated fish, which Vern caught in the river for her to cook and scoff. What a help he's turning out to be. Meanwhile, a father, son and daughter out camping in the woods are slaughtered by Catardin. Isley and the sheriff blame the natives and Hawks goes on the run because he's totally innocent and it'll look better that way, presumably. Visiting the campsite by helicopter, Vern, Maggie and Ramona discover a mutated bear cub caught in a salmon poacher's net. They need to get it back to the village as living evidence to exonerate the Opis and expose the activities of the mill. A storm hits and the helicopter cannot take off. Hawks turns up and they're now all stranded. Bit of a Jonah this Hawks character character, looks as if they'll have to hike. The rest of the film is taken up with repeat attacks and murders by the rampaging Katahdin, and our intrepid gang struggle to avoid the raging freak of nature and escape alive to tell the tale. As is the way of such things, they ain't all gonna make it, you know. Prophecy starts well with a bravura opening sequence. Torches at night. There is frantic activity. Men with bloodhounds are searching through dense forest. The bloodhounds get a scent and they're off at pace. One is so driven it plunges over the edge of a cliff, its handler trying to pull it back up by its lead. The lead snaps before the dog can be retrieved. One of the team descends on a rope into the gully. He falls, coming round to see by the light of his torch that dismembered corpses are scattered all around him. Something roars, he screams. Cut to Frankensteiner and cinematographer Harry Stradlin Jr. coordinate the action here with a raw kinetic energy and powerful feverish impetus, little of which carries through to the remainder of the film, which is more pedestrian in all respects. Still, it's a gripping little opener that grabs the attention. Stradlin provides decent visuals across the board though, making good use of the great outdoors, combining the exterior visuals reasonably effectively with the studio-bound moments. You can see the join, but it don't hurt all that much, and the propulsive score by Leonard Rosenman is a great travel companion. The gist of David Seltzer's screenplay has a topical resonance even today, especially in the UK, what with greedy regional water companies currently being hauled over the coals for the indiscriminate and disproportionate dumping of raw sewage and God knows what other toxic cocktails into inland waterways and the sea. I don't know if they've looked into the science, probably about as much as Verne I imagine, but it suggests that if people, animals and plants are fed raw untreated toxic shit, it tends to render them a bit dead, I think is the technical term. I don't believe we're paying these companies to kill everything unless it's something in the small print I'm unaware of. Topical or not, Prophecy is written as B-movie schlock with compatible dialogue. Now I like B-movie schlock until it has an identity crisis, thinks it's something else and takes itself too seriously, because then it fails on two levels. It's not good or smart enough to be a relevant, thought-provoking critique of ecological abuse, and it's not humorously unself-conscious enough to provoke much merriment. Prophecy ain't a laugh-a-thon. Not intentionally, anyway. The acting isn't any great shakes either. Richard A. Dysart makes the most effort as the frustrated, over-talkative and shifty company puppet Isley. Robert Foxworth glares and blusters and looks gruff, angry and disgruntled. Armand Assante as if someone just slapped him in the face with a wet haddock and challenged him to a fencing duel with Dayglow vibrators, and Talia Shire as if she wishes she was in another Rocky sequel instead of out in the woods with a big fucking cello case, a mutating womb and a dick for a husband and a big monster running amok. Talking of the monster, the creature effects are not the most convincing I've ever seen. Alien got it right, but Katahdin looks like a walking butcher's bin if the bin was shaped like a bear balancing on its hind legs. I'm thinking it's a costume and someone inside is giving us the creature from the Black Latrine. I'm right, aren't I? It's a guy in a monster suit. Apart from some occasional flashes of style and vigour, Frankenheimer seems to be autopiloting through it. He never sustains or capitalises on the early promise of the well-captured and thrillingly executed opening. I can imagine him waking up with a killer hangover, wondering where he is and what he's supposed to be doing, remembering, thinking, ah shit, then hitting the source again before going to work for the day. I'd been misleading you to suggest it's an unsung gem in Frankenheimer's resume, like 52 Pickup or even Reindeer Games. Why does everyone seem to hate that film? So I'm not going to. It's very likely close to being his worst feature film. Yep, even the Holcroft Covenant might be a superior piece of work, okay? How likely is it I'd ever get to say that? It does manage to alleviate boredom by moving along with a bit of snap, providing random episodes of unintentional hilarity along the way. My personal favourite is when Katahdin attacks the sleeping campers and the son finds himself stuck in his sleeping bag. He tries to escape like he's in a sack race, bunny hopping along. Then Katahdin swipes him with a big claw. He flies through the air, hits a large rock, and the sleeping bag explodes in a snowstorm of blood and feathers. Do sleeping bags normally detonate like that? Is there dormant nitroglycerine in the fibres? New one on me. Whatever, it is funny. Running at a close second is tribal leader Hector confronting the beast on the shore of the lake simply to get his head clamped in Katahdin's jaws and swung around the place like a rag doll in a rat trap. And don't get me started on the slapstick genius of the raccoon attack. Too much, I'm telling you. Expected John Candy or Chevy Chase to turn up. There's also some mileage in considering who's going to get savaged to death next, decapitated, disemboweled, even though it's pretty much predictable who's for the chop. And even today I never cease to marvel at the perplexing, mysterious way in which Maggie's pregnancy, which was a key relationship factor and plot thread from the start, is not addressed, mentioned, resolved, or referred to in any way at all at the end, simply dispensed with and forgotten about as if it never existed. Phantom pregnancy? Who the fuck knows? I certainly don't. Prophecy, for all its shortcomings, does claw out some grudging affection from me. I like eco-horror flicks, especially the 50s sci-fi ones, in which the H-bomb or radioactivity always seemed to routinely play a part. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Them, Tarantula, those sort of things. Then there was Hitchcock's superlative benchmark, The Birds, the big screen version of Brit TV series Doomwatch, and Colin Eggleston's underappreciated and shoestring-budgeted Aussie thriller Long Weekend from 1978. Prophecy references and slots into that lineage, and is one of the most off-the-wall examples of the genre, with its pretensions mercifully buried under thick layers of faulty pseudoscience and dramatic absurdity. And what about that final misfiring, tacked-on shock scene at the end? It's either going to raise a smile or leave you seriously pissed off for being so jaw-droppingly atrocious. Or both at the same time, most likely. Thanks for taking the time and giving your attention freely. Please consider hitting like, don't like, leave a comment, subscribing, checking out my Patreon page, or the super thanks button below. More new content as and when. Back soon, pilgrims.